Well, Toni Lodge, it is so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I feel like I've met you before, but I haven't.
Because everyone from Perth is friends.
That's it.
Yeah.
So many Perth people move to Melbourne. It's actually crazy.
It's a Perth thing.
It is.
It is, yeah. But do you ever feel like really good about yourself that you've like lasted?
Yes, I do.
Because there's a lot of people that I like went to school with that were like, I'm going to move to Melbourne for a year and then move back.
How long have you been here now?
Like 6 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'm a Victorian now.
Yeah,
like,
you are.
My license is for Victoria.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you really are.
Yeah, I
love
live
it.
here.
I'm not up to that stage yet. And when I did recently come back from seeing my family, I was like, I've got to go back home, Mum. And she was like, home? But it just came out naturally, which is good. I must be settled then.
No,
you know?
that is
it's
really
a good thing,
nice.
I
And
think.
because you're like, what's home, I guess.
Yeah.
For me, it's like where my bed is.
Yeah.
And where my
Same.
pillow is.
No, that's
and
it.
like,
I was like, I'm ready for my own room and
when
bed
I can
now.
sleep in my own bed and shower in my own shower, that's when I'm like, that's my
Yeah,
home.
yeah, I'm comfortable. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, welcome to Inherited. We will start with your recipe today. And yours is a special sourdough starter that was actually given to you.
So for anybody that doesn't know, I make a podcast with my best friend Ryan.
Yeah.
It's popular for people to be like, are you two dating? What's going on? I'm in a long-term relationship with somebody else, my boyfriend Torbs, and Ryan is married to his wife Bridget. His wife and I have been friends for actually a long time. And when I said that I wanted to start making sourdough, she gifted me a jar of her starter and gave me like her own personal recipe that she'd like tweaked and come up with and decided how she wanted it. So when I first started, she sent me all of these videos of her making bread so that I could kind of like copy what she had done. There's something so wholesome about like making bread.
Yeah.
It makes me feel so connected to the earth or something. It's
Yeah.
like I'm a very wholesome woman. Every time I make bread now, I like message her and I'm like, oh, like just popped a thing in, or like I'm just waiting for my sourdough starter to like activate or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's been like a really nice thing that we can talk about because like they've got a baby. And so it was something that she was like so generous with her time to like teach me how to do it and share her like secret with me. And I think it was just a nice way for us to connect outside of like me working with her husband.
That's beautiful. Like you've bonded and have an incredible friendship also through the sourdough starter.
Yeah. And I think that it's just like takes a really special person to be patient when like teaching somebody something. Like it's hard to share things like that. And there was just something really nice about like not watching a YouTube video.
I've never made a sourdough before, but I know the starter almost has
a life of its own.
Yeah.
You have to keep it alive and you have to look after it and stuff. I don't know. There's just something really special about it. My mum always cooked a lot, but like I don't really have any of her recipes because she kind of just like cooked whatever.
Yes.
So it's kind of the first time I've had that really like special like connection with somebody that like isn't in my family.
Yeah, through food.
Yeah, which is just so lovely.
And it's really beautiful when you do make those special connections with your mates, partners or friends or colleagues even, like somebody else that's in their life that you might not have ever met. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
And it's almost like a big part of like letting people into your life is letting them have access to your like crew as well.
Yeah.
So there was something just really cool, I think, about us having our own thing that had nothing to do with Ryan and had nothing to do with anything else. It was just like for fun. Yeah. It just like makes me feel really special. And when I was thinking about what recipe, I was like, that's the one.
Yeah.
Like there's just no other thing that I like hold as special as that.
Ryan, is a great friend of yours and you've built a massive show together, 5 episodes per week and over 2 million followers on TikTok, the Toni and Ryan podcast. What brought you two together in the first place?
We were working in radio together and we kind of got along fine. Like it wasn't like one of those things where you go, oh, we have to do this.
Yeah.
And I actually really wanted to be on the air in radio. So I was just like an audio producer. I wasn't like talking into the microphone or anything. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should try posting some videos on Instagram or doing a bit of a reel so that I can try and get a radio job. And Ryan said that he would help me, which I was like so stoked about because he'd been creating content for a long time and he was like a grown up. And I was like, oh, teach me everything you know. And then, we kind of were like, oh, let's just record a little demo. Oh, well, if we're recording the audio, we might as well record the video as well. Well, if we're recording the video, why don't we like post it on TikTok and just like see how it goes? Yeah. And we did, and it kind of went kind of crazy and we were like, oh my God, like should we keep doing this? And then we were both working full time Monday to Friday, and then on Saturdays we would go in and record a few things and then cut them up and edit them and stuff and see how it went. People kind of started commenting being like, do you guys have a podcast? Like, how can I listen? We were like, oh, we don't, but should we? Like, should we try this?
That's awesome.
And we did. And now it's like our full-time jobs. And like we've got our own little studio and it's really, really cool and just such a dream come true.
You guys created this opportunity for yourself, really.
Well, yeah, out of the hope that maybe someone would put me on the air on the weekends.
Yeah.
Like it's just so wild to even think back to that time now and that it was by accident.
Yeah, so it was completely by accident.
Yeah,
One day you would just say, oh, I'll get some ideas through content. What are you doing?
Yeah, and it wasn't like, how do we get famous? Let's come up with a strategy. Let's do this thing. I was just like, oh, I just want to create stuff. Well, how can we come up with something? And he was like, yep, let's just get in the studio and see what happens. And this is what happened.
I love that. Look at you guys now.
I know. And now me and his wife are making sourdough together.
Exactly.
It's just real full circle
moments. I mean, yeah, you guys have worked incredibly hard. And obviously with such success comes the lows too. What do you reckon has been some of the toughest moments creating the Toni Ryan podcast or even before in your career?
I'd say the harder parts were that it all kind of happened really quickly. There was a lot to get used to really fast. I was working behind the scenes and then all of a sudden you've got all these people that are listening to you. And I think that was quite scary how quickly that kind of happened. Like a blessing and a curse because everybody wants it, but then it happens and you're like, whoa, it's actually the gravity of it, I guess, starts to set in. There are things now that I never thought that I would be doing, like managing a team or, you know, communicating with people in the way that I have to now, which I love, like learning new things. But there's also parts of me that's like, I'm just a baby. Like, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess, kind of like trying to take things one day at a time.
Of course.
When it's easy, I think, to like get ahead of yourself and go like, oh my God, like, is this too good to be true?
Yeah.
Because it feels like
it at the time, of course.
So there's a little bit of that as well, I think, where I'm like, oh, am I just an imposter? And like
imposter syndrome. It's
totally.
So you're also putting up 5 episodes per week, all of your video content, coming up with your ideas and trying to run a business simultaneously. And with such an enormous following and, you know, all the opinions on the internet too, how do you hold on to such an unwavering belief in yourself?
Ooh, I don't know that I do. I don't know that I have a lot of belief in myself at all, but I have a lot of belief in Ryan. And I think knowing that he can keep a very level head and that he's really good with this stuff, like I'm very lucky to have like a partner like that.
Yes.
But I think we have been really lucky that we actually have a really amazing community and
yes,
we don't
you do.
We just have such amazing tarpers, we call them Toni and Ryan podcasters, and we spend a lot of time with our tarpers as well. Like we comment a lot and we talk to them and, you know, every single episode of our podcast starts with us calling a tarper on the phone, no matter where in the world that they're from, and we go, oh, would you mind if we got started today? And they say yes. So it's almost like don't let the shitty voices be the loudest ones. Because there's a lot of people that go, oh, I got this crap comment and they post it on their Instagram story. I'm like, oh, just don't give them any oxygen.
No.
And that's been something that we've been quite conscious of, like just trying not to think about the one.
Yeah.
They slip in though. There's definitely times where that you can't avoid it or you see it and then you wish that you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's just you go, yeah, well, I don't like everybody, so not everyone's going to like me. And you try and do the like
that's
meditative.
Yeah. But you've kind of got to, and you're online so much every day and putting your own personal brand out there, but yourself, because your content is so relatable and hilarious. Do you know what I mean?
But like I'm talking about my family and I'm talking about like me doing something silly in the shops or like that my dog vomited on the carpet and I can't believe it. You know, like it's all those things like from my home. So it's very vulnerable parts of your life that you're then giving to people. So I guess it's kind of like, yeah, well, if you don't like it, that's actually fine, but I can't think about that.
But then, putting yourself out like that, does it get easier over time?
Well, so Ryan's been forward-facing for probably like 10 years now. But because I was just a producer, I feel like this is all so fresh for me.
Yeah.
It's less about getting more confident in myself, but getting like a bit better at like managing what I want to take on.
Yeah.
I go, I'm just not going to read those comments because I know it's going to make me feel really bad about myself. Whereas it's easy to be like a glutton for punishment. Or if you're having a bad mental health day and you're like, oh, I'm just going to read them because I feel bad anyway. And you just punish yourself.
No, why do we do this, honestly? Like, it's so easy to do. And you'll be literally so self-aware in the moment. And my mind.
Yeah, and you're like, why am I still doing this? It's like when you're full and you like are like, you know what, I will have an extra bit of pasta or whatever. And you're like, I know that I'm going to feel bad later, but it's just at the moment, it's just like curing my
You can't stop. Well, your chemistry on mic with Ryan is really special too. How would you describe your friendship?
Oh. Now, I would describe our relationship as very honest because we've decided that there just isn't room for bullshit between us.
No.
Like, our time is too precious to waste it, like, thinking about whether one of us is angry with the other or, you know, those kinds of things. So we've just decided that we're just going to be honest. And actually, what a freeing thing. If anybody's ever thinking about being honest with people, it's actually awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been honest in terms of, like, saying what I want. But with Ryan, he's like, tell me what you want me to do. And I'm like, oh, I actually hate that. And he goes, great.
It's just easier. Like you can just understand there's no bullshit, I suppose. You're not like going around trying to imagine what someone's thinking and running a business together too. You'd absolutely have to be like that.
And he's got a young family as well. Like, so it's kind of almost like we were just like, let's not make things take longer than they need to.
Yeah.
There's been tough times, but I wouldn't change it at all because it's like we've learned a lot about each other, but also like ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Why do you think you found it hard to be honest? Not even within just like your work relationship, but that feeling, like where do you think that
I think it's probably the imposter syndrome stuff that I go, well, you know better than me. And I probably like don't give myself enough credit.
Yeah.
So there was probably a lot of times when I was just like, oh, I don't really like that. And I go, oh, but like, what if that's wrong?
Yeah.
And not wanting to kind of put myself out there, not being willing to be vulnerable, I think is probably like the top tier thing for people that find it hard to be honest.
Yeah.
And I can say that because I identify like that myself.
Yeah.
And I think the flip of the coin is also being like, if you don't like my idea, it's not that you don't like me.
We attach our self-worth to that, honestly.
Absolutely.
I can relate. Yeah.
And I think being like a creative person as well, when you come up with an idea, it's because you're coming up with it and you think it's either really funny or really awesome or really heartfelt or whatever.
Yeah.
And you put so much emotion into an idea and that when someone goes, oh, that might not work, and you kind of go, that's a piece of me.
Yeah.
You've just said no to me.
Yeah.
So I think trying to like, if my ideas are here, I'm like back here and trying to separate myself from that to protect myself.
Totally.
Because I don't think that really affects anybody else.
No.
But I also said like, I don't want you to be scared of telling me the truth because of how I might react.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, let's just put a line in the sand here and I promise I'll try and like, you know, remove myself from that. And that's been just so good for our relationship. But all of that's taken a really long time to like even figure out what we needed. It's literally like being in a relationship with someone and you're constantly like tweaking and making sure that, you know,
you're learning so much about each other.
Totally.
And like what each other's boundaries are or what you like, what you don't like. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, oh, is there a line there? Can I ask about that? Or would you joke about that? Or is that fine?
Yeah.
When everything's on the table with the podcast, it's like, well, then everything's on the table with our real lives. Together as well because we know everything anyway.
About each other. Yeah.
So that's also another part where I'm like, oh, could you not bring that up? He's like, yep, got it. I think it's just a lot of trust is the biggest thing. Yeah.
It's such a good product between the two of you and that chemistry that everyone talks about and that you can see in here when you're watching your videos too.
And I think having worked in radio where like while the song's on, the two people that are doing the radio show, they're not talking to each other.
No.
And then so people go, oh, do you actually really like each other? But we hang out on the weekend or we'll go and get lunch and things like that. So I think it's that fact that we actually genuinely do like each other and genuinely spend time together. Obviously, there's times where I'm like, I cannot be with you for another moment.
Yeah.
Especially if we've been traveling or whatever. I'm like, cool, I've had enough now.
No. So fair though. You work so closely together. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love him.
Yeah.
I do.
I love it. What do you think your proudest moment so far has been within your career and Toni and Ryan?
Oh, that's such a good question. Proudest moment. I think every day I feel proud about the fact that we're like doing it.
Yeah.
I just feel really proud that we keep listening to our own guts and making decisions. And I guess there is pride as well in the fact that the people that listen to our podcast feel so safe there.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a lot of weirdos in there that are like, I found my people.
Yeah.
And Ryan and I feel that way too, that we're like, oh, we're both like a bit too loud and a bit too strange or, you know, and to know that there are people out there that kind of are relating with our opinions or our senses of humour.
Yeah.
I think there's pride associated with the fact that we've brought all these people together that like feel safe with us.
Yeah.
And Ryan and I both have had our own share of like rough patches in life where we have turned to media in some way, whether it's like rewatching The Office US for the 9,000th time to help you get to sleep or listening to an old radio show or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think to be able to pay it forward and then to know that other people are doing that with our show is like...
It'd be so heartwarming.
Oh,
yes.
like even right now I've got like crazy goosebumps about it just because I can't believe that my voice is the one that people are like, I need to have a bit of a smile today and I know that they will help me.
Yeah, it's the community connection. And that's also what you're talking about with your recipe too with Bridget.
Like there's just something so wholesome about that safe place, I think.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to like let people into your life.
Yeah.
And so there's something really cool about that I feel super proud of.
Generosity and your community connection really holds a special place in your heart. Why else do you think that is?
I had a really good relationship like with my mum who she passed away like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't grow up like with grandparents.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up with like my parents having lots of friends.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really important to me now because I never really had that growing up, that like village kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And so it's important to me now that I kind of create that myself.
For yourself.
I read this thought starter piece the other day talking about how for millennials, like we are spending so much money on things that like back in the day would have been a favour.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like you didn't pay for movers. All your friends came around and helped you move house.
Yeah.
And like you didn't get an electrician because someone came over and looked at that thing for you because it was your dad's mate who is an electrician. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's all those things. Us now, we are spending so much more money than any generation ever has because we just don't want to inconvenience anyone.
Yeah.
Isn't
I can
that
so
so
see that. Like I
mind-blowing?
feel like seen. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, even, you know, recently we got an air tasker at our house to come and take a bunch of rubbish to the tip because like I've got a little car.
Yeah.
When like back in the day it would be like, oh yeah, he's got a ute. Like we'll get him around and then we'll cook you dinner.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really exist anymore.
That connection, it does drop off. I wonder as well, like post-COVID too. And
100%, yeah.
We've all kind of hibernated. And I love hibernating, don't get me wrong. But yeah.
I just feel like that's really missing.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's something that I would love to know that if somebody needed something, they'd go, oh, I'll call Toni because she'll be able to help me out.
Yeah.
And I think that to start that, you have to ask other people. So then they
You
go,
do.
oh, she would be happy to do that for me because she asked me.
Yeah.
It's like opening up the communication channel for that to be even a possibility.
Yeah. If someone offers you something, take them up on it.
Because they want to
you.
do it.
Yeah.
They want to help. Like that's going to make them feel awesome.
Yeah.
And think about all the times that you've offered to someone, they've gone, don't worry about it. And you've gone, I would have actually been really happy to do that. Or I would have loved picking up from the airport because we could have spent 20 minutes in the car rather than like, what else was I going to do?
Yeah.
Again, watch The Office for the 18th time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not busy. I'll pick you up from the airport.
Exactly. And then you always feel your cup's full after when it's people like that are in your life. It was special to you.
Absolutely.
Getting to actually see them and connect.
And not just a text that's like, oh, how have you been? It's like, oh, no, I'm going to come and do something for you and like, you know, bid for that affection and that one-on-one time, I just think is really nice. And that's what I really want to kind of get in my life. I feel like that's one thing that's missing and that's what I'm trying to build
on it.
Yeah.
On this beautiful sourdough starter
I
has been
know,
such an
the
incredible way
bread.
for you and Ryan's wife, Bridget, to connect.
I know. Yeah.
Oh.
So it's really special.
I love that. We'll chat about your rule next. And this is a rule that you inherited from your mum. It's something she used to say.
She used to say, start as you mean to go on.
Yeah.
If something's worth starting, it's worth starting well. And if you've started it well, you might as well just keep going.
Yeah.
And so I say it to my sister a lot because obviously she remembers mum saying it. It'll be about the silliest thing. I'll be like, well, start as you mean to go on. And I kind of mean it in a funny way, but then I think about what it really means and how many things in my life I go, oh, like I'll just give it a crack. Then I go, hang on, like if this is important, it's something that I should give a bit of time and energy to. I guess a little bit like the podcast, you know, it would have been easy for us to go like, oh, you know, maybe we'll just slap something together. We're like, nah, like if we're going to give this a shot, like let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it right. Let's put everything into it.
And we did. And, you know, it's like paying off because there is like so much joy that we get out of it. And it's now, you know, our jobs. But yeah, my mum was just like really supportive about everything. Like she drove me to like every ballet concert, every like music thing that I did, like every show I was in. Like she was just so supportive.
Like your cheerleader, couldn't wait to support you and be there.
Such a cheerleader, and like, you know, would sit in the car and happily wait until I was done. And so I think when I think now about times where I'm like putting myself out there, I'm like, oh, she would be in the car downstairs because she would be so happy that I started well. So I think that there's just something really nice about across the journey of a hobby or a project or whatever. It's like, well, if you started well, then it deserves a good end.
Yes.
But I also think about it in terms of like my day.
Yeah.
Like if I start my day and I'm like, I wake up and I can like have my breakfast and like hang out at home, like have a slow morning. I'm like, oh, I'm bringing good energy into my day.
Yeah, well, when I read it as do your best no matter what life throws at you. That sort of is the meaning I pulled from it too, which is interesting.
Okay.
But I love to hear your meaning too. And then it kind of made me think it sets you up for whatever you're doing, whatever task it is, hobby or project. But it's like, things might come within the space too before you get to the end. Just keep doing well. Yeah. Life's going to throw hurdles at you one way or another.
Like it sounds so simple. Like, yeah, well, start as you mean to go on. Like if you start something and you don't really give a shit about it, then what do you expect is going to like come good of it?
End. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it works in lots of ways. And I love that you had your own like meaning from just reading it.
I wanted to share that with you today, actually.
I love it.
So I was sitting with it and I was like, I love this rule. So your mum used to say this. Do you remember her telling you this when you were a little girl?
Oh, yeah. Start as you mean to go on. And she used to say it like that. So there wasn't even any like backup information. It was like quite cryptic. Like I can't imagine that as a kid I really appreciated her saying that because I'm like, do you have any advice? You're just saying something.
Yeah.
Like
I'm still a kid. I'm not introspective yet, Mum. What does this mean?
Exactly. And I'm like, I don't have any life knowledge yet.
Yeah.
And I think it means more to me now that I can't talk to her. I've just got this like basically one size fits all piece of advice from my mum.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter what's going on, but it's going to kind of like fit in and work out. She probably wouldn't even remember saying it, but she used to say it all the time.
I love that though. And it's things that you pick up and that you inherit and that it's going to stay with you. You'll pass this on to people too.
Absolutely.
Because it can be used in so many different moments of your life. You were just 19 when your mum sadly died. If you're comfortable, can you take me back to the day you found out she was sick?
So I was at uni at the time and I was working in like the Coles deli. So yeah, like slicing meat and like in the fish section and stuff. And we were really busy and I kind of finished my day at work and I had like a few missed calls from her and I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, is everything okay? But like my dad answered and was like, we're at the hospital. Like, can you get here now? So I was like, all right, well, I'll go home and I'll like feed the dog and then I'll meet you guys there. And I kind of didn't really think about it, which is strange because I'm quite a stressor. If somebody said to me, I need to talk to you later, I would think about it all day.
Oh my God.
And they had thought that she had a stroke. And when I got there, I was like, oh my God, so you had a stroke? Like, what's happened? And they were like, no, your mum hasn't had a stroke. And I was like, sick. And they were like, well, no, your mum has a brain tumor. And I remember I was standing there and so I've got 3 siblings. I've got a brother and 2 sisters and all of us were just standing there and I was like, what? And I couldn't really hear it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really process it because I was like, well, no.
No. Yeah.
Well, obviously not. Like, this doesn't happen to my mum. This doesn't happen to me or my family. It was like that moment literally just went on forever. Even now thinking about it, I can like feel it. Like I just can go, it's such a core memory of like seeing her sitting there and like my family all being in one room and it just like such a strange emotion.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember feeling sad, but I wasn't not sad. Everything and nothing all at once kind of like rushed over me. And then I remember being like, okay. And my mum was crying and my sister was crying. And I think in that moment I'm like, give me a fact. Because right now there are so many emotions going on. Could you give me a fact right now that I could like tangibly think about? Like, and they were like, yeah, it's just like a freak thing. Like it's not hereditary or anything. It's just something that happened to her and it's CNS lymphoma, which is like a blood cancer, but her primary was in the brain. It's like very rare.
Yeah.
So she had a blood cancer, but it was in her brain. So it was like really rare. They didn't really know why it had happened. And then we had to leave her there.
I can't imagine. So you and your siblings and your dad were there too.
Yeah. So all my siblings are much older than me. So they all kind of went to their respective homes with their husbands and wives.
Yeah.
And I went home with my dad and we were like, so what do we like? We left her there? Like, was that the right thing to do?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then she started like chemotherapy and radiotherapy like straight away. And then she died 11 months later. So, but I am really grateful that she wasn't sick for so long because it was just so heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for her, heartbreaking for my dad, like just awful and just shit, like just so shit. And I'm also so grateful to have gone through it because it makes me so happy about my life now and to know that, you know, she like is safe, I guess. And I wouldn't wish that she was here if she was unwell and things like that.
Yeah.
Like it's sad. It makes me so sad. She would just be so stoked about the life that I have. Since I could talk, I was like, well, one day I'm going to be famous and like I'm going to live in this beautiful house and blah, blah, blah. She was like, well, I can't wait. Like I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
And so there's something really cool about being like, well, I hope she is seeing it because like, wow, look at this cool life and like, look at what I get to do. This is my job. Like, you know, it's a weekday right now and we're doing this. Like we could be at Coles. The thought of her just being like, I just know how stoked she would be. And I can like hear her like laugh in my head and I can see her smile in my, like when I close my eyes, I like know exactly what she'd be like. I just know that she'd be so happy, even though it obviously makes me really sad and I wish that she was here. I just know she'd be really happy.
She would. Oh, yeah. I'm getting emotional too, Toni. No, she would though. Like she'd be so proud and as a 19-year-old, that would have been really, really hard to come to terms with at that age in your life.
I didn't know anything about myself.
No.
It also felt like after that, I was like fending for myself. I'm like, I have to figure this out. Obviously, the only experience I know is my own and I just had to do it.
You spoke about in your memoir, I Don't Need Therapy and Other Lies I've Told Myself, which I absolutely loved. You wrote the final night of your mum's life was the first night she'd been alone, not just since she got sick, but in her whole life, at least in the years you'd been a part of it. And that really stuck with me.
So while she was sick, like she was in and out of hospital a lot. And she kind of couldn't be alone because she couldn't do a lot for herself. And we kind of thought, well, we don't want her to be alone in the hospital either. So especially in the last few weeks, like someone stayed with her each night and like slept on a like foam mattress on the floor. Yeah. And then the rest of the family would get in and that person would go home and then we'd all swap and for the last 2 weeks, she was in a coma and she couldn't talk and she wasn't really there. But like, if you kind of got lucky, like if you squeezed her hand, she would kind of squeeze back. And so there was sometimes there was just like a little moment where you'd be like, oh, she's in there. But she hadn't been for a long time. And so you'd kind of go like, oh my God, she's still there. And then I think like, I'm so loud, you know, I just never shut up. And I think about like the whole time that I was in her life, she just would have been like, can you shut up? You know, everyone's like, oh my God, I've been at work all day. Like, do you have to sing this song right now, you know?
Yeah. Like, I just want peace and quiet.
Just shut up. The very last night that she was in there, which we didn't know, but
of course
we kind of went, you know, we've all just got to get a good night's sleep. I think that she'll be okay tonight and we'll come back in tomorrow. And that was the night that she died. And it was like, she was like, well, I don't want you to see this. Like, come on. Like, you don't need that.
No.
And so we went back in there and she was there and she just looked so peaceful and we kind of said goodbye and they, you know, we took her stuff with us and I just remember thinking like, oh my God, how sad. Like it would have been so quiet. Imagine just being there by yourself. And then I was like, well, she probably loved it. But then I was like, well, she would have been thinking about us anyway. And she would have been like, oh my God, I loved it when everybody was so loud and fighting and arguing or, you know, Christmas. Like I like to think that she would have been replaying all of those things in her mind. So even when she did get a moment of peace and quiet, that she just like wanted it to be loud anyway.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, I think it's just like really comforting for me that I'm like, you know what? I bet you she did love it. Even though she wanted it to be quiet, I'm sure that when it finally was, she was like, well, what am I doing? Like, I'm still loud. So.
And we love it. Like, seriously, she'd be hearing you all the time, honestly.
Oh my God,
like,
she's probably sick of it now as well. She's like, oh my God, 5 days a week this podcast is? Are you sure?
No. How did 19-year-old Toni process the loss like at the time?
I didn't. I think I just like threw myself into being like, well, my family needs me and my dad needs me or whatever. I dropped out of uni and then ended up rejoining the following year because I was like, well, I have to do something. Like I can't just blob along. And that was part of me being like, she would want me to go and keep doing what I wanted to do. So I rejoined uni and then I ended up like getting a job in radio and I kind of just like pushed all of my grief away. I don't like regret it, but I wish that at the time I had someone around me that like was giving me good advice, which is probably part of the reason why I like to share my story now because I just didn't have anybody around me that knew what to do. I was just a kid. I just like had no idea what I was doing. And I pushed all my grief away and I just hadn't really dealt with it. And it wasn't until I think it was like 2000. So she died in 2013. It was in 2019 that I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I started going and seeing a therapist and that was like the best thing I ever did for myself and it made me feel so much better and I was finally like even all the memories I talk about in my book and that we were just sharing with each other just then like I just hadn't thought about that for so long because I just couldn't. Yeah. Like it would just crack me open like an egg and I'd be like, nope, put it all back in, like can't deal with that yet. Yeah. So I think that there was something really amazing about finally talking about it, but finally like letting myself remember the good stuff as well. Yeah. Because it was obviously such a horrible time, but there were some great memories in that 11 months where, you know, like when my mum had to shave her head and me and my two sisters were like, well, we'll shave our heads as well, like in solidarity. And she was like, oh, we can't all look bad. I just remember all those things where I'm like, oh, I would have missed out on that memory if I hadn't done the work through the bad stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though it was really hard, I'm so grateful that I could be brave enough and strong enough to go through the shitty parts to get all of the great things that I just pushed away. Yeah. There are days where it's so hard and I just can't think about it. But then there are days when like a song that she loved will play and I just like smile and it makes me really happy. Yeah. And those days now are more common than the ones that like floor me. And I think that that is growth and I think that that's like kind of like healing. Like she'd want me to be happy and she would want me to tell people that she was so funny and so beautiful and that she always had her hair done and like, you know, like she would just like love that people know that about her. Yeah. And there's another part in my book where I said like she would just be stoked that there's this version of her that people get to know. And I'm so glad that there's a version that people get to know and that like around the world people are like, your mum sounds so awesome. I'm like, well, she fucking was. Yeah. Like she just was. She was the best. Yeah. So as horrible as it is that it happened, I'm just like so grateful that like where I'm at now and what I've been able to create for my life, it means that I get to share her with so many people around the world.
Of course.
And she would be stoked.
What do you think was the catalyst for seeking therapy? Like, can you take me back to that moment? So that was about 5 years after, hey? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was working in breakfast radio at the time, sleep deprived. I was really struggling and it was just a really hard part of life where one night before bed, I was like, oh my God, well, I've got to go to bed. Like, and not just go to bed, but I've got to fall asleep because if I don't fall asleep in the next half an hour, I'll only get X amount of hours sleep because my alarm's going to go off at 4:30. And I remember just getting so stressed and my boyfriend Torbs, he was there and he was like, you're okay? Like, we'll pop you into bed. We'll put something calming on. We'll get you to sleep. Like, it's okay. And I was just like, oh, I just hate it because it doesn't matter what time I go to sleep. I'm tired when I wake up anyway. And then I was like, if I'm going to be tired anyway, then what does it really matter? Because if I went to bed at 6 p.m., I'm still going to be tired because it's 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. And then I was like, if I just tell my body that it's 8 p.m., will that be fine? And I had a mental breakdown because I was like, oh my God, time isn't real. Nothing makes sense. I don't like, my body doesn't know. My brain doesn't know. I don't really know. And for the first time in a really long time, both parts of my brain like came together and were like, oh, we are friends. We actually don't have to fight against each other because like, you know the saying like, oh, I couldn't live with myself.
Yeah.
Well, if you're you, then who's myself? Like if you're not the – so I think it was just realising like, oh my God, like my brain is really powerful and so am I. Yeah. And I could probably figure this out. Yeah. And I went to therapy the next day.
Yeah. It's not easy. It takes time to find the right one. There's so many
factors. Yeah. And, you know, it was like there was on a tram line. And so I was like, well, I could catch the tram. And I was like, I'm too scared. So I like caught an Uber there every day. And an Uber that I did not have money for. Yeah. Like I was really poor. And I was like, okay, well, but I'm not going to get there if I don't do that. So I'm just going to get in the Uber and I'm just going to like think about it and it's fine.
Yeah.
And I remember the very first therapy session I went to that I caught the tram.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I could not have done this 6 months ago. Then all those little wins that I was like, you know what? Like I'm starting to like trust myself and like now thinking about that just feels like so trivial. But it was such a big deal then for me that I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Yeah. Like I'm leaving my house and I'm getting on the tram and I'm like putting myself out there and I'm going to therapy and like I know that not everybody gets that like eureka moment, but I feel like I really got that. I mean, therapy is like a journey, you know, you don't get fit and then stop going to the gym. You keep going because it's like something that you have to work on all the time. And I think when I changed my perspective about wanting to be healthy, like mentally healthy and wanting to feel good about my own thoughts and like feeling safe in my own brain.
Yeah.
I think that's something like a lot of people can relate to. And without having done that, there's just no way I could be living the life that I have now.
It's really, really brave. I agree with what you're saying too. Like our brain is a muscle and we need to look after it too. You know, our brain is just as important like as our body, as whatever else it is.
Absolutely,
It's really important and you were 19 at the time. It's going to take time, you know.
I'm 30 now, almost 31. And so I'm kind of like, I couldn't have done that any quicker.
No way.
Like even if someone had have said to me, so the day that my mum died, then the next day gone, well, you need to go to therapy. I wasn't ready. Obviously, there were just some really hard times through there that when I look back, I'm like, wow, I don't know how I dealt with that. But now I'm like, well, I wouldn't change it because everything that happened has happened for the best. And now I'm like in a really good place, so I wouldn't change it now.
Us at 20 years old compared to 30 years old, it's just like your 20s regardless are such formative years. It's like, who am I?
I know. No, 100%. And that's why like at 19 I was like, well, hang on. Like I don't know anything about myself. It was so scary, but I'm just so glad that I did it. So if anybody is thinking about taking the plunge and like trying to go to therapy or trying to put yourself out there, like do it. Because even if you do it once and then you go, cool, I'm going to just like take a breath now and like maybe I'll revisit that. Like I think you'll just feel so much better.
Yeah.
It really actually can change your life.
It can. Yeah. No, 100%. Hey guys, it's Ruby. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Inherited. Hosting this show has made me even more obsessed with conversation. I truly love hearing different stories, perspectives, and rituals. And if you ask me, the best conversation happens over delicious food. This summer, I'm entering my dinner party era, whipping up dishes for my friends and forcing them to play a round of conversation cards. If you plan on throwing wholesome dinner parties or long lunches over the break, I've got a hosting tip. You've probably heard of Cobram Estate extra virgin olive oil. It's actually Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil because it's made by cold pressing fresh Australian olives. It tastes very fresh and fancy, so it's perfect for all your summer entertaining needs. If you're doing lots of hosting over the break, grab some Cobram extra virgin olive oil. And a huge thank you to Cobram Estate for supporting this episode of Inherited. I have spoken a bit about grief on Inherited, and it is just so different for everyone.
Absolutely.
I don't think there is one way you can put it. How have you found navigating life in your adult years now, processing a loss like this?
I feel like I have this amazing advantage because I went through something so horrible, so young. I think it's given me a really unique perspective on things that have happened in my life that like people my age don't have.
Yeah.
when you experience loss, no matter how close or far away they are to you, you still have to deal with it. It's still really hard.
Yes.
Because something that a lot of people said to me when my mum passed away was like, oh, were you close with her? And I was like, yeah, I was. Like, we were best friends. And then I'm like, well, are you deciding how you're going to value my grief based? Like, you're making a value judgment based on whether we were close or not. If I said to you, no, we weren't close, you go, oh, well, that's fine. You weren't close. But still your mum. Like, it's almost, how dare you ask that? And I remember thinking that to myself and being like, oh, well, that shouldn't make a difference.
No.
And so I think that a lot of those kinds of things now have made me so much better equipped to help people in my life, because I think I can come from a really, I'm not going to say good place because I don't think it's a good place, but like I think I can come from a perspective of being like, well, I've been through something like XYZ.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's the same as what you're going through, but I can only imagine how you're feeling because I've felt like this before.
Yeah.
So I think that that's given me a lot of emotional intelligence from having been through that, which I am actually very grateful for. Something that I really detested that people said to me a lot was like, oh, well, stay strong. And I was like, I actually can't. Like, I'm broken inside. And another thing that people used to say is like, well, I'm so sorry. And I'd be like, well, you didn't kill her, so like it's fine. But then I'm like, hang on, so you're saying that you're sorry? And then I go, oh, that's okay. And all of a sudden I'm comforting you. And so I've kind of been on this like micro campaign since then to be like, we don't say sorry. I'm going to tell you that really sucks that happened, and I'm devastated to hear that. I'm never going to apologize to you because I'm not sorry. I'm sad you're feeling that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that it's really shit that happened, because that's how you feel. You feel like shit because someone's just passed away. There's just something so awful about people apologizing in that moment when I go, no, I don't want to then comfort you. I need you to just agree that it sucks.
That it sucks.
Because it does. Like, I'm not
does.
asking you to fix it. I just want you to tell me that you get why I'm sad
right now.
That's all you want really from people.
Yeah.
You know?
I think so many people listening would resonate with what you're saying, because grief can be not a taboo thing to talk about, but something when someone you love so much has lost someone close to them, you might not know what to do. And like that I'm sorry could be like an instinctual, just like, I'm sorry.
But I think
it's not the right thing.
I don't think
and I
it's
think
the
this
right
is such
thing.
a really good discussion to be having.
But I think like, because there were people in my life as well that like didn't talk to me for ages because they just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what I would have appreciated more than you like ghosting me would have been you calling me and being like, I don't know what to say. Because I don't know either. My mum's never died before.
No.
I don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
A bit like what we were talking about before, the vulnerability of being like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I need to say something. And I think there's a lot of power in being like, I don't know what to say, but I love you. And if you need anything, I'm here. I just wanted people to acknowledge that it sucked so much.
You obviously bring so much joy to your fans and listeners too. Has humour been a way for you to move through such a loss too, or maybe even deflect?
Oh my God, 100%. Using dark humour was the only way that I could talk about her. When you're talking to a friend and they kind of go, oh, I was just chatting with my mum the other day.
Yeah.
And I used to just get so mad that there was no way that I could just casually bring up my mum. And that made me angry.
Yeah.
This was pre-therapy, obviously. And I'd be like, well, hang on. Like, I want to talk about my mum because she was awesome and I know she's not here, but like, I really want to talk about her as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that when people would be like, oh, my phone's dead, I'd be like, oh, my mum as well.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to talk about her.
Yeah.
There's something really fun about people being like, oh, like they don't know whether they can laugh or, you know. It was the only way that I knew how to like bring her up and kind of remind people, I guess, that like I've got a mum too, but I just don't really know how to bring her up otherwise.
Yeah.
But no one ever goes, oh, so what was your mum like before she died? Because that's like a fucking weird thing to say to someone.
Yeah,
like, you know, that's not very casual.
No.
So I think that it was just like my way of like breaking the ice and kind of being like, I'd love to talk to her and about her and for her, but it's just I can't now. So it was just like a way of
expressing her and your love for her too.
Yeah, and I think like letting off a bit of steam.
Yeah.
Like I just like was like, if I just relieve a bit of pressure and talk about her a little bit, that's going to just like make me feel like I'm like leveling out a little bit.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people since starting the podcast that have said like people don't like it when you use dark humor about like people that have passed away, but I do that. So thank you. Like people have kind of said,
People can relate to that.
Yeah, but people are like, oh, my sisters and I make jokes like that, and other people just don't get it because they get uncomfortable and whatever.
Yes.
And you kind of go, well, you don't actually need to be uncomfortable on behalf of my mum because she'd be laughing too.
Yeah.
Like if she heard, I would never make a joke that would make her upset ever. So
it's her legacy. You know, like it's you reminding yourself and the world of your beautiful mum.
Yeah, and I think as well, like if that were me, I would want people to be making jokes about me because I'd be like, you know what, if that's how you want to remember me, amazing.
What else have you inherited from her?
Oh, wicked sense of humour, definitely.
Yes.
I wish that I'd inherited more of her confidence. Like she was a really confident person. I remember her going to this like female entrepreneur thing.
Yeah.
And she was like, you know, a female business owner. So she, you know, was like really well spoken, and she would always speak up, and she never was worried about taking up too much space, and she could like rap with the best of like men in her field.
Yeah.
And I wish that I'd kind of had her around for long enough to learn those kinds of life skills.
Yeah.
She was really caring, and I think that I'm like that. And she was so loving, and she loved us all so much. And she made us all feel really, really special. And I know that that can kind of sound bad, like, oh, what? So you're a perfect snowflake and like you never did anything wrong. And it wasn't really like that. But she just loved us all so much. And she loved that we were all really different. I think that now makes me really appreciate people that are like that as well. And I try and reciprocate that to people that I really care about and make people feel really included, because for a long time, I didn't feel included. You know, I lost a lot of friends because they just didn't know how to relate to me, and they were all going out drinking and like going to Europe and whatever, but I was at home looking after my mum. I didn't really feel like I fit in anywhere. So now I want to make sure that people feel very loved by me.
Yeah.
Always, because that's how she made me feel. Like I still feel loved by her now, and I haven't talked to her, you know, like so there's something so nice about like that has like stood the test of time.
Totally.
That it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, now been 11 years or whether, you know, soon it will be 20 years and 30 years, and I hope I still feel the same way about her.
Yeah.
And that's something that I hope that like people get from me as well.
Oh, I think they do. It radiates, Toni. How do you celebrate the life of your mum now with your family and your siblings?
So my mum loved Chinese food.
Yeah.
So like every year for her birthday and stuff, like we'd normally get like Chinese takeaway, and like there's been times where we've cried into the Chinese takeaway. There's been times where we've laughed over it, and it's like also just like letting that happen.
Yeah.
So like food again is a really big one, because she was just like, she loved birthdays, loved Christmas. I think it's lots of little things where it's like, oh, I'm going to make potato bake the way that my mum used to make it, because that's just how it feels like she's here, and things like that.
And start as you mean to go on. That's the rule that you inherited from her.
Yes.
So I'm definitely keeping that one. I love it.
So keep eating Chinese food every year.
I love it. We'll go on to your relic next. And this is something you inherited as a baby, and you recently had a revelation about it on your show as well, the Toni and Ryan podcast.
Yeah.
It's a Ducky spoon. What is a Ducky spoon?
Yeah, so I've got this little I actually brought it in with me.
Cool.
It's like a little teaspoon, and I got it as.
Do you have it? We can grab it out now.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
So it's literally just a teaspoon, and for my whole life, so like I said before, I'm 30 now.
Yeah.
My whole life I've had this Ducky spoon, and it has the perfect spooniness, as you can see.
Yes.
And it's literally just a silver teaspoon. And I was telling Ryan about it on the podcast, and I handed it to him, and he said, "That's not a duck."
Is that a rabbit? I think it's a rabbit, looking at this spoon now. And we'll put some of these up on socials too, so the listeners can see. Is that a rabbit holding like a golf club? It's on a teaspoon, a silver teaspoon.
Yeah. Yeah. But my whole life, I think it's a duck going like this.
Yeah. I can see how you'd see it as a duck though.
Yeah. And so as a kid, I just went, that my little Ducky spoon. And my mum went, yep. And my whole family went, yep. And then last year I showed it to Ryan, and I was like, because this is my Ducky spoon. It's really important to me. And he goes, sweetheart, I'm so sorry, but I think that is a rabbit.
Oh my God, Ryan.
And I was like, no, it's a duck. And
Yeah.
I was like, don't be a dick. You know, this is like my prized possession.
Yes.
And he was just like, I'm so sorry. And he started to tear up. He's like, I think he was like, I shouldn't have said anything.
So did you use this when you were a little girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still use it now. When we've moved house, this does not get put with the cutlery. This gets moved by hand, like in my handbag, and then it gets put back in the drawer. Like I am so protective of it. And it is so special to me. And when I first moved away to work in radio, I was living in a share house with like these two boys, and I stupidly put my Ducky spoon into the like communal drawer.
Yeah.
And one day I was like looking for it and I was like, oh my God, that is not missing, is it? And it was. And they were like, we can't find it anywhere. It's being thrown out. And I was like, you are joking. And it was 2 years, I think, after my mum passed away. So it was like still very fresh. I was like not okay. And I was just like, are you joking me? Like that's so disrespectful to my things. And they were like, we're really sorry. Like we didn't know it was important. And also who cares? Like they just did not get it.
No.
And then like a month later, one of the boys was like cleaning out their room and it was upstairs like in one of their rooms and it was recovered. And I could not believe it. And I was like, oh, my God, thank you, Mum. Like you found that Ducky spoon.
Yeah. And is it special holding on to a relic like that reminds you of your childhood and your mum?
I think there's just something so innocent about caring about a Ducky spoon.
I love it.
Like I think there's just like something so like primal about these things that we've had for a long time. And like this has no monetary value.
No.
This doesn't mean anything to anybody. And if you, Ruby, like if you were in the kitchen right now and you picked up this spoon, like you wouldn't care. And I think that there's something so innocent about the fact that I love this and that it means so much to me.
Yeah.
And that I feel incomplete thinking about a world where I don't have it.
Yeah.
Which is just so silly, but it just like brings me so much joy. Like last night we were sitting down after dinner and my boyfriend Torbs was like, do you want a little bit of ice cream? And I was like, oh, sounds amazing.
Yes.
And he handed me the spoon and I went, oh. Like I just love it. And it's just so.
And it's been with you for so long though. It's been with you since you were a little girl.
Yeah. Like I think it was like my first birthday. My nan gave it to me or something. And I just love it.
I love that you've held on to that. And also,
me too.
Toni, as a little girl, you were mentioning before you were like, you wanted to be famous. Was that always your dream as a little girl?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And then I remember when Australian Idol became a thing, I was like, well, I'll go on that. And then the year I turned 16, they stopped making it. And I was like, well, now what?
Yeah.
Like my dreams are dashed. Like that was it. And I think along the way I've had like lots of different ways that I was like going to get famous.
Yeah.
Like whether it was being a dancer or a singer or an actor or something like that. Like there was always something in my life that I was like, well, that's what it's going to be. And like I was saying before, like my mum like fully supported every time I was like, that's the new thing. She was like, great.
Yep, let's
Love
go.
it.
Let's book you in.
Yes, yeah, like we'll do it. And it sounds like it not in a stage mothery way of like, oh, here we go. It was just like, I love it. Great. Yeah. And she used to be like, well, as long as you can make your commitments, I don't care what you do. So she's like, if you can pay your own phone bill, then that's fine with me. Kind of like that was her thing. Yeah. Now I'm like, well, okay, I've got a few more bills than just a phone bill now. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to really step it up.
That's it, honestly. Do you think little Toni can believe where you are now today?
No way. Big Toni can't even believe it. Every day I wake up, I'm like, what? Yeah, it's so wild.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
It's so cool. Sometimes you just got to sit with it and really let it sink in because you guys are grinding. You've got 5 episodes out every week. Your videos are out all the time. You're working really, really hard.
And we enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's less of like a churn and burn kind of thing, but it's like we actually love it and you know, people
have so much fun.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun, exactly, and people really like it. And a bit like what I was saying before, like when we started, it wasn't like, let's get rich and famous. It was like, this is really fun. And as long as it keeps being fun, we're going to keep doing it.
Totally.
And it's still fun. You know, I hope that it never stops being fun. I'm sure that it will get to a point where we go, you know what, like, what if we did 3 episodes a week for a while? Or, you know, like there might, you know, it might ebb and flow a little bit. But for now, like we're having so much fun and we love what we do and it's such a dream that it's almost like, why would we not want to come into work every day? Not everybody loves what they do, but I'm really lucky that I love to do what I do. Yeah. And the only reason that I get to is because of the people that listen and share our videos and comment on things. And so it's just really cool that people like us enough to like get around us.
Oh, yeah. The community you've built is incredible.
It's wild.
What do you source the greatest sense of fulfillment now? Is it in the work you do?
I think for such a long time, my identity was tied with like what I was doing for work. Oh yeah, I work in radio, or oh yeah, I work in podcasting or whatever. And now work isn't my whole life. It is something about me. Mm-hmm. It's not the whole thing. And so I think that that's my answer. I think the coolest thing is that I was really running away from myself and filling my time up with working a lot and with staying busy and trying to, you know, always do the grind thing and whatever. But now I think I love that, like, I leave work and I've had a great day and I go, I'll probably do some work later, but for right now I'm going to like cook dinner or like take my dog for a walk, when I never have felt that before.
Yeah.
The fact that like I have a job I love so much, but it fulfills me to the point where it can.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with or without it.
Yeah, because it's not all of who you are, you know, and I think it can be hard when you are working in these creative spaces and building your identity for an audience.
Totally.
To be like, well, where does
that
Toni
stop and
on
where
the
do
mic stop
I
and begin?
Yeah. And I think because as well, when you say like, well, you don't know the whole me or you don't see the whole me, that feels like all of a sudden you're being really disingenuous.
Yeah.
Whereas no, I think it's like I'm the same person. Like when my friends or family or whatever, if they listen to the pod, they go, wow, that is actually what you are like. But there's also parts of me that I don't share. But there's so much of me that I go, oh, well, that's just for me. I think that there's like something so nice about knowing that you can keep some things that are just special for you. Even when I was writing my book, like my editor said, are there things in here that you would like to keep for yourself?
Yeah.
Because I talk about my mum so much and I share so many memories. She was like, I want you to just take a minute and think about whether there are things in here that you would like to be your own memories and not share with anybody. And I ended up leaving it all in because I've still got things that are just for me. But I really liked that question.
I do too. That's really
because I don't think we really think about that a lot of like, you go, yeah, I'm sharing it, but it's still my story. But you go, oh, but is there sometimes things that you would just like love to be a like little golden egg that you just keep in your chest and that's just yours? And so I think that there's a lot of things that through my life I go, oh, that's going to be a great story for the pod. And then I look at something and I go, oh, that's an egg.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an egg just for me and I'm going to hang on to that.
You've got to.
Yeah.
Well, we'll finish on your ritual today, Toni. And this is something you do with your partner, Torbs.
Yep.
And you've been doing this. What, first of all, tell me what it is, and then I want to go back and see when it all first began. So what is this ritual you share with him?
Every birthday or anniversary, we hand make a card for each other. We've been doing it for as long as we've been together. So we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, actually.
Congrats.
That we've been together. Thank you.
So good.
Yes.
I love that.
So we've been like, we've known each other for a bit longer than that because we went to uni together, but like officially boyfriend and girlfriend is, just gone 10 years. I think it started because we were poor and like we didn't have money to give gifts to each other. We were both uni students. And so we just write a little card and they've always got like a pun on the front.
Yeah.
And I just love it.
It's so wholesome. And it's like actually sitting down, using your hands, like we were talking before about the sourdough starter in your recipe.
Yes.
Making something meaningful.
And like, so we've moved house about a year ago and we kind of still got like random boxes full of stuff. Yeah. And I looked in this box the other day and every card I've made him was in. And I was like, you've kept all of those? And he was like, haven't you kept all yours? And I was like, yeah, I have. Yeah. But I just didn't think that like you would have. And he was like, of course, your love is in those cards.
Oh,
isn't that
so beautiful? I love that. What was the first one you made each other?
I made him one that was a green card and it was like cutouts of two olives holding hands and it said, Olive you so much.
I love that. Was that when you first told him that you loved him too?
No, it wasn't actually because that was a different day. But yeah, and then for my 30th, so end of last year, he bought me a KitchenAid. He was like, this is a really big birthday, big present, but big birthday. And it was a KitchenAid and the card he handmade said, I love you so much.
Stop. That's so beautiful. 10 years in, to your relationship. It's such a nice ritual that you've kept doing for each other.
And I think both of us surprise each other every year that we go, oh, you made a card.
Yeah.
And then I'll make a card for his birthday. He'll go, oh, you made a card. And we just do it every.
For Valentine's, birthdays,
yes,
Christmas.
Everything. Yeah. But I just love it. I think it's so sweet. And I think it's like we're going to run out of puns at some point, I'm sure. Like where we there's no more puns to make on like I love you or whatever. I think for his birthday I made him one that was like 2 matches together and the matches like flames made a love heart. And I said, we're the perfect match.
Oh, I love it
I know
so
it's
much.
so cheesy, but it makes me so happy.
But it's so cute. When did you first meet Torb? So you were at uni, and you were like late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, so I was like 18 and he would have been 21, I think, or something. We met and my mum wasn't sick.
Yeah.
So he's known me through all that like we weren't in a relationship then, but he knew me through all that time.
Yeah.
Which is so strange to think about. He kind of lived on my way home and he didn't drive at the time. So I was like, oh, I can drop you off. And we just started like becoming friends and then we just started to really like each other and we started hanging out. And I think it's just like such a like cliche kind of way to meet, but I can't imagine doing anything else. And like that was like pre-Tinder and stuff like that. So it was like I've never done the apps or anything like that. And I'm probably pretty grateful for that because I don't think I'm great on paper. So I think like I'm like, you know what, I don't think I can deal with the rejection on my phone all the time.
Horrible, honestly.
I just don't think I could deal with it.
No.
It's one of those things that sounds really fun. Yeah. But then I don't think I could handle it emotionally or mentally.
Oh, it can, no. I'm like, no comment. I don't even know what to say. But meeting someone that's Torb's like your friend too and building on that connection when you're so young as well. Like you're saying you've grown together. Was there ever a moment when you questioned whether maybe you'd grow apart or together, like meeting so young?
I think there probably was like, I wasn't like, well, we're going to be together forever.
No.
I was just like, you are so great and our values align and we have a lot of fun and like we like similar music, but we hate some of the same stuff as well, which is great. And, you know, and then it was like the longer it kind of went on and he was like, oh, like, would you like to move in with me? And I was like, oh, yes, like of course. And then so I feel like it just kind of just kept getting better. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was just like, well, this is a done deal.
Yeah.
And like we've been together for such a long time and we communicate really well. Like we talk about everything and like I'd had other boyfriends before that, you know, there was a lot of like we'd fight a lot or, you know, whatever because you're young and you don't know. No. But with Torbs, it's like if even we get into a little like snink with each other, I'm like, well, I actually don't want to fight with you because like I hell love you. And he's like,
so much.
He's like, well, I hell love you and that. And then we just stop fighting. There's just something really cool about the way that he loves me, but also the way that he like loves our dog and the way that he like loves our life. And I just think that there's something so special about like the vulnerability, I guess, that he shows me and that I show him as well. Like he's been with me through really, really hard things. I was in a really bad place for a long time, like having lost my mum and he just unwavering support. And I don't think that I ever really felt like I deserved that. Yeah. And so having that was like, oh, you don't have to do that. And he was like, nah, but like I want to. I really care about you. And that probably taught me a lot about how I wanted to be in a relationship with somebody, but also like what we were talking about before, that like unconditional love that I'd received from my mum. And I was like, well, that's just mums. And then I was like, oh no, like you can meet people that make you feel like that as well. So I'm just so lucky that I've received such different types of love, but in the same way, if that makes sense. Like obviously one is like maternal and one is like romantic, but also friendship and like a partnership and, you know, but just to feel like it was just like pouring into me at all times is just like a crazy thing that I know that I'm so lucky to have. And I am very, very lucky every day to keep making the choice that he does and that I do, that we keep deciding to be with each other and that.
Well, you've been together for such a long time, you know, it's a beautiful long-term relationship and you would have grown together as well.
Totally, like so much has changed in the time that we've known each other. Like there were times where we literally ate eggs because that was all we could afford. And we were like, they're pretty filling. Like, I guess we'll eat just like one egg a day or something because that was like all we could afford. And now, you know, like we have our life together and we live in Melbourne and we moved away from home and he's followed me to like 4 different cities for work and never questioned it. And I was just like, well, of course you're here because we love each other. Yeah. That just makes sense.
Oh, was there a moment when you knew that you were in love with him, or was it kind of a gradual sort of just it all was playing out in front of you?
It felt like we'd just known each other forever. Yeah. And then so when we started, I was like, yeah, like we should be boyfriend and girlfriend. He was like, yeah. And like, that's so cool that it was like a discussion almost, that not that it was like, will you go out with me? Yeah. It was kind of like, what are we doing? Yeah. Like we like each other, right? You know, and that just has felt like so natural.
For the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and he has been there through some of your hardest days too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I can't believe that I've had somebody in my corner like loving me so much when I just could not be there for myself. Yeah, I'm very lucky.
Toni Lodge, thank you so much for coming on Unherited today. I just felt like I've been chatting to a mate. It's been like such a nice chat.
Glad. Yeah. Do you want to be friends?
I'd love to be friends. Well, we both are from Perth as well, which is
Perth chat.
Hilarious.
Yeah, north or south of the river?
I grew up north, but then kind of lived in the city. You?
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, I'm south.
Okay. So. Okay. Yeah, I'm not a south. All right, this is awkward.
Oh, God, okay. I'll take this off it.
No. Oh, we do also finish on one question.
Yes.
What do you intend on passing on, and who would you like to pass it on to?
I think the biggest thing that I would like to pass on, and it's not to anybody in particular, it's just that I hope that when people remember me that they go, oh, she like really made me happy, or like she made me laugh, or oh, I met her once and she was so great, or oh, we were out for dinner together once and this thing happened. Like I don't ever want there to be a point in my life where people don't remember me in that way. Like I really hope that that's what, when I think about my mum, I like want to smile and I'm like, oh, well, how powerful. Yeah. Like hopefully that when people think of me, whether it's because I'm gone or we just like don't talk anymore or whatever, I hope that there's like a smile there. Yeah. And that would be that would make me so happy.
Well, my cheeks actually hurt from smiling. I'm not just saying that to everyone listening at home, and you might see it on the videos, but you radiate happiness and optimism, and so you're passing that on to everyone. And I think everyone listening to your conversation today will really be able to resonate. And
thank you.
No, thank you, Toni.
Thanks for having me.
You've been watching Inherited, and just a quick one, we are a new show, so if you want to help support us, make sure you click subscribe on YouTube and hit the like button right now as well. It's how we grow our audience, and it's really the best way for us to continue speaking to incredible guests. We'll be back with another episode next Tuesday. I'll see you then.